authors of this week's drasha, Dr. Lynn and Dr. Stephen Deutsch, in memory of Lynn's father, Alan Herkowitz, on his 5th Yortzeit, 12th of Tishrei, and Seth and Masha Katz, in memory of Masha's father, Isaac Silberberg, Yitzchak Binim ben David Yehuda, whose Yortzeit is this Sunday, the 16th of Tishrei. Thank you very much to both the Deutsch and Katz families, and both Neshamos should have aliyos. I did just want to mention for a moment, Thursday afternoon we sent out an email from the shul about a reminder of different policies in general for COVID, and one or two new policies or updated policies. A number of people in the shul definitely seemed frustrated or confused by one of the policies, which was that we asked that if people davened a minyan elsewhere over Succos, they not attend minyanim at Shomrei. I just want to say I'm very sorry for whatever frustration or confusion that's caused people. I just want to explain for a moment, as I'm sure everybody realizes by now, COVID and how we deal with COVID is such a moving target. The concern has to do with intermingling of germs. If chas v'shalom, someone at a given minyan, and obviously we at Shomer don't believe we're immune to having such problems. The problem could come from our shul and our minyan as well. But if someone in a given minyan, someone davened at one minyan, one shul, in the morning, and then comes to another minyan, another shul in the afternoon, theoretically a person could pick something up from someone at the morning minyan and bring it to someone in the afternoon minyan, which is of course a risk for all of the shuls, and we're doing the best we can. All of our institutions are doing the best we can to mitigate risk, but the fact that the vast majority of the minyan attendees at Shomrei are davening their minyanim in one place, when someone davens in one shul or in one place and then comes to, let's say, our shul, so it's just expanding the range of potential spread. There seems to be a general increase both in our community and in the broader East Coast region, country, etc. And so particularly over Succos, where there's so much movement and so much of a challenge of people appropriately distancing, our thought was we would at least try to take this step of containing things even better by not having shifting from one minyan, from one building to another building, from one place to another place. I just want to at least explain it. And again, I do think it makes sense for us to be doing it, but I do want to say that I do feel bad for the frustration that it's caused people, and for whatever that's worth. I just wanted to share that sentiment. To move on. There's a strong emphasis in the Torah when it comes to the celebration of the holiday of Succos. There's a strong emphasis on simcha, on rejoicing on Succos. And though there's certainly an idea of rejoicing on the holidays in general in the Torah, the greatest emphasis of rejoicing of any day on the Jewish calendar, as far as the Torah is concerned, is the holiday of Succos. And I think this is something that people grapple with frequently, which is, what does it mean, tell me to be happy? If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm not happy, I'm not happy. What kind of instruction is that? Forgive me, how many times have I, as a parent, and my guess is others who are watching this video, fallen into the trap of a very lovely child sitting and crying and screaming at the child, stop crying. That's probably not going to help the situation. Hopefully I don't make the mistake often, but I'm sure I've made it before. So what does the Torah mean? Be happy. If I'm happy, I'll be happy to be happy. But maybe I'm not happy. Then what do you want from me? It's a very basic question. Different approaches. But what I'd like to share with you for a few moments today is the approach of Rabbi Levovitz. He sort of goes in one direction with it. I think we're going to go in a slightly different direction. But the basic principle is based on a presentation from Rabbi Levovitz. And he explains as follows. Simcha, joy, is not exclusively an emotion. Simcha, in a sense, is an outlook. And he explains that what true joy is true joy is when one has the feeling, one has built the impression for oneself that they have what they need. I'm happy when I feel that I have what I need. You might not be excited by the same things that excite me. But if I feel that I have it, I'm going to be happy. What I thought of when I saw this explanation was the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Ezehu Ashir Hasameach B'chalko. Who is a wealthy person? He who is happy with his or her portion. So what does simcha mean there? Simcha means I look at what I have and I say, this is fine. This is all I need. And that, when you think about it, is exactly how Reb Levovitz explains what simcha is. So it is possible to tell a person, have simcha. Because we can dictate whether or not we'll have simcha. We can reflect on things. We can think about things. We can realize that whatever we need in this world, God has provided for us. And if I don't feel simcha, I'm not thinking enough about that. I'm not believing it enough. It's an interesting concept. Why would simcha be uniquely associated with Succos, more so even than Pesach or Shavuos? So it's very important to realize that the holidays are definitely associated with the agricultural calendar as well, and that could very well be a reason why Simcha would be a time of unique happiness. But on a deeper level, Reb Levovitz explains that after the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur experience, a person understands that they have a meaningful connection with God, and since this individual has a meaningful connection with God, this individual realizes that they have everything they need. What else could I need in this world if I have a meaningful connection with God? Everything else are small props in the big picture. Now, when you first hear that idea, I think many of us will think to ourselves, wow, that's great for a high and lofty rabbi who has had this remarkable experience on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and now he's one with God. You know, I davened a little bit, I repented a little bit. I don't think I'm one with God. I don't think I have everything I need in my relationship with God. But the truth is, if we really reflect on it, I think this principle of Rabbi Levovitz is relevant for each and every one of us, or can be relevant for each and every one of us. To come out of Yom Kippur with a feeling of contentment with one's relationship with God is not to say that one is perfect, and not to say that one is this purely spiritual human being. Rather, it's to say something else. I see the path. I know that the end of the path and the goal of the path is way further than where I currently stand, with many curves and many twists and turns, and I don't even know if I'll ever get down that path all the way. But I believe I'm part of the program. How could a person go through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and not think that God is interested in me? How could a person go through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and not have a semblance of a view that I need to get a little bit better at this, and I need to get a little bit better at that, and if I do that, I'm further along the path? I think if a person reflects on that, they can come into Sukkos with a great sense of simcha. For all of my flaws, God's interested in me, and I have, it might be very vague, but I have a roadmap to move forward. And I've thought about what I can do to move just a little bit forward. It's interesting, it brings to mind a very powerful idea of the Sfas Emes. I've certainly mentioned it in Shul before. When the Torah talks about the 4 species of the lulav and the esrog, the Torah says, "Ulkachtem lochem." Literally, you'll take for yourselves. By the way, from that wording, "Ulkachtem lochem," you'll take for yourselves. We learn that on the first day of Succos, a person has to own the lulav and esrog in order to be yotze with them. But the Sfas Emes says another idea. And the Sfas Emes says, "Ulkachtem lochem," means that when you pick up the lulav and esrog, you realize that you're picking yourself up. What does that mean, you're picking yourself up? So the Sfas Emes cites the famous medrash that each one of the 4 species represent a different type of person among the Jewish people. One person might be a person of good deeds and Torah scholarship. One person might be a person of one or the other. One person might be none of the above. But the person picks up the lulav and the esrog, and they say, I can see myself in this bundle. There is something about me that's in this bundle, which means that wherever I am, wherever exactly I'm at, I'm part of this project. I'm part of this program. And it could be in the middle of the winter, we don't necessarily feel that way so much. But coming off of Yom Kippur, we feel that way. And that can bring a feeling of simcha. And if I have that feeling of simcha, that means that every challenge in which I find myself, whether everyone is dealing with it, whether it feels like no one else is dealing with it, I'm not alone. God is with me. God is interested in me. And God is giving me this challenge because in some way, somehow, this is good for me. Maybe it's a means of growth. Maybe it's even an atonement. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Whatever, I don't know. But I'm not alone, and there's a purpose to it all. I would just like to reflect a bit longer on this idea of feeling simcha through my sense of connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and through my sense of having purpose. There's another way that we can feel simcha, or heaven forbid despair, in a similar vein. Not necessarily, not exclusively in our relationship with Hashem, but it could also be in our relationship with people. Have you ever had the experience that you walk into a room, maybe it's a family get-together, maybe it's in shul, that you walk into a room and everywhere you turn, someone is smiling at you. Someone is happy to see you. Isn't it an uplifting feeling? Isn't it an exhilarating feeling? Have you ever had the experience of walking into a room and it seems wherever you turn, no one cares that you're there? Many years ago, I walked into a shul in a community that I did not know, and not one person looked me in the eye, not one person greeted me. Candidly, it was a very deflating feeling. So, whatever it was, I found some open seat near the back. I start davening. It was a Shabbos morning. 5-10 minutes into davening, I feel a little tap on my shoulder. I turn around, and I had this big smile on my face because I thought a person was going to come over and welcome me. And I turned around with a big smile, and the fellow gave me a big smile back, and he said, "This is someone's seat." So That didn't do a lot for my feelings of the moment. It made for a good story 15 years later, but it didn't do a lot for my feelings of the moment. Feeling that we connect to a larger group of people, it is a great feeling of simcha. As we embark on this wonderful, wonderful holiday of Succos, that's a time of simcha, and hopefully we feel the spiritual exhilaration of Succos, and we tap into that simcha. Just want to mention one basic thing to think about, and I know so many of you are thinking about this far more often than I do. We have to do everything we can to make sure that people that we know that perhaps are significantly isolated right now, and even if they're not completely alone, but perhaps they're socially isolated beyond whatever members of their household, feel the simcha, feel the joy of connection to other people. You know, I just yesterday, I had the pleasure of interacting with a member of our shul, and a very fine person. And the individual said to me such a painful thing. The individual said to me, sometimes I feel like I'm not here. What they meant was they feel like they must have disappeared. Of course, that was a very painful thing for me to hear from the person. And obviously, I felt bad that I hadn't reached out to the person in a way that, I, and I'm sure so many of you, would like to do. We all have all these things pulling at us all at the same time. It's a very jarring feeling. So to think about this, particularly as we come into another Yom Tov, to ask ourselves, it can be Erev Yom Tov, but maybe Erev Yom Tov is busy. Maybe Erev Chol HaMoed. To ask ourselves, who do we know who we haven't made contact with recently? Realize there are people that we know that we literally haven't made contact with for 6 months. And just to call them up. And by the way, not to call them up officially as a chesed, as an act of kindness. To call them up as a friend. And I was thinking about it today. I want to give you what I think is the perfect entree. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can't use it because they also will have watched the video. Well, very few people watch this video, so don't worry about it. But I think the perfect entree is, think of how many people normally sit in your vicinity at Minyan on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in a normal year, and try to recreate for yourself the general box around you, and ask yourself how many of those people were not in your vicinity on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The odds are practically none of them. Even if they were in shul, everyone was all different places, different spots. And then of those people, ask yourself who you've had very little contact with. And humbly call them up. Call them up. I missed you this year. I didn't see you. You know, and coming into Succos, I normally have the pleasure of seeing you Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I want to wish you a good year now. It could be the most popular person in the show. They'll still feel good. They'll still feel good. And it might not be the most popular person in the show. So I want to wish everyone a simchadik Succos, a joyous Succos. So many other years, there's so many other things that are a little bit more obviously accessible that might bring us joy on a Yom Tov of Succos. Circumstances, get-togethers that might not be happening this year. But to try to think a little bit deeper and to think about the good fortune of our connection with God, having a Yom Tov, after the Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur experience, to look up at the schach of the sukkah and say that our true protection is from God in heaven. Is there a better year to think that than this year, to reflect on that than this year, and to think how much God has a great interest in each and every one of us, and how much potential we have in the year to come to grow in our connection with God. And God willing, each of us will have the opportunity to gain greater joy. And let's try, maybe Erev Yom Tov, maybe on Chol Hamoed, but let's try to spread that simcha a little bit to some more people that we might not have seen this past year, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Have a wonderful Yom Tov. Take care.